Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the Hot Grill Summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Harvesting Nature's Wild Fish and Game Podcast. You got host here, Justin Townsend, and today I'm very excited. We have a special guest, and we're going to chat about one of my favorite topics. I think probably second to food is drinks, and second to that is probably hunting and fish, or third to that is probably hunting and fishing. So all those things kind of will culminate together on this episode. So excited for that. We'll share some updates here in a minute, but I'm joined here by my brother in the Great White North, Adam.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
I will introduce our guest here in just a minute, but before I do that, I'm going to kind of get a little business talk out of the way. So we are excited that we're kind of in the middle of the season. I don't know if excited's the word. It's fishing season. Foraging season has largely come to an end, depending on where you're at in the country. I don't know, Adam, you still getting stuff up there?
Oh yeah, there's always something to get.
Well,
so
true,
I'm picking milkweed flowers. I just made a lamb's quarters dish tonight for supper. So that's like kind of a wild amaranth leaf kind of thing. And I'm on the lookout now for chanterelle mushrooms, which should be popping up soon. And also, there's a spot near my place where I find pavement mushrooms.
Pavement?
So I'm going to go out tomorrow morning.
Pavement mushrooms. You're just getting chunks of pavement?
Pavement mushrooms. Yeah. So these are Agaricus bitorcus, I think they're called. They're really strong mushrooms, and they're very closely related to your white button mushroom, which is also Agaricus. And these ones push out of like really hard packed soil or gravel, or even can push up like paving blocks or sidewalks. So they're known as a pavement mushroom because they're often growing kind of out of the edges of pavement and stuff. So, but really they're just like a slightly richer white button mushroom.
Nice.
And they grow usually, like I usually get, like 6 to 10 pounds out of this one little flush every year. So I'm gonna check it out tomorrow and see if they're there yet. So yeah,
nice. Well, good luck. Hopefully they're there and you can enjoy some tasty mushrooms before somebody else comes in and picks them up. Let's see. I think for me, for updates real quick, so not much going on, doing a bit of hiking, outdoor stuff. I haven't been doing quite as much foraging. We're in the middle of preparing to move here in the next 3 weeks, so we'll be heading over to the East Coast, to the D.C. area, so that's going to be kind of a big shift for us, but packing happens next week and moving the week after, so we'll be well on our way, and looking forward to being on the East Coast. And people have been sending me pictures of their crabbing activities and their oystering and all these activities over on the eastern seaboard that I'm excited to get back into the water too as well. Do some more saltwater fishing and things like that. But just right around the corner. But other than that, trying to enjoy the last bit of Colorado before I head out. So I don't know, Adam, what's new with you?
Well, not too much. Season's a little slow. I'm gonna get out pike fishing for northern pike soon. Our bass season opens up in a week or two. So they're all nesting right now, so we're not allowed to fish over the nest. But we'll be, so I'll be trying to catch a couple big pike before the water warms up, and then get into bass. And like I said, I got my eyes open for mushrooms, so I've kind of gone from the wild edible side now. I'm going deep into mushrooms until November probably.
Nice.
So
nice. The other thing I was going to mention too is we're just about to punch out a line of new wild fish. Eat More Wild Fish t-shirts and stickers and merchandise. So that'll be coming out in the next couple weeks. And similarly to how we rolled out a lot of our Eat More Wild game stuff in the fall, we're going to roll those out kind of consecutively through the weeks over the next month or so. And we'll probably start to put away the wild game stuff until hunting season's back out. But we shall see. So if you want to pick up some Eat More Wild game shirts, go pick them up now before we take them down off the website for the season. And let's see, other than that, we still have our pig camp going on in December. We've got a few seats left for that. We're working on another camp in the fall, which hopefully we'll be able to announce here pretty soon. And then we've got our Snow Goose camp scheduled for February. And we're already, February or March, Adam? Forget.
I think February.
Either way, one of those 2 months. Go to the website, check it out. And then we're already working on next year's schedule, so we'll roll camps out as we get them scheduled for next year too. Hopefully to have some cool surprises and partnerships coming out of next year too that may entice you furthermore to either attend a camp or come attend a camp again. But I think that's all I've got here, so I'll go ahead and introduce our guest. So our guest today is a hunter, angler, forager, outdoorsman, cook, and winemaker. His passion for wine and love for the outdoors began with fishing and hunting among the vines of his family's property in Dry Creek Valley in California. After a career in engineering, he wanted to get back to his roots. As a fourth-generation vintner, he was inspired by his family's history of growing grapes since the 19th century and began making wine. He opened Passalacqua Winery in 2004 with a vision to create quality wines that pair with the outdoors. Jason Passalacqua, welcome to the Wild Fishing Game Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, excited to finally make this happen. We've been crossing paths now for several years. I think whether it be at like BHA events or over the phone or the internet or email. So it's good to finally sit down and chat.
Yeah, it is. It feels like I've been pestering you, and likewise backwards, and finally connecting.
All good. No, never. I'm happy to chat at any time to anybody. So will you tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of how you got into the outdoors, growing up in Northern California, just kind of whatever you want to lay out for us.
Yeah, sure. I can start. I grew. So where I'm located is wine country of California, which is Sonoma County. A lot of people hear wine country and they think Napa, but Sonoma County is another region that is just west of Napa. So we have more of a coastal influence. So we grow some different grapes. And I was born and raised there, fourth generation. My great-grandfather came to that area, settled there. He was one of 7 brothers that came over from Italy. And he made it all the way to Healdsburg and laid down some roots there. And he started a winery pre-Prohibition, and it actually burned down during Prohibition, which I always make fun of and say is probably an insurance claim, knowing the Italians. And then he passed away, and his daughter and his widow, her mom, started another winery in Healdsburg called Sonoma County Cellars, and my great aunt Edith, she actually was one of the first female winemakers in California, and her thing was she would make bulk wine and stick it on a train in barrels and ship it back east, which I can't imagine the condition of that wine once it got there, sitting on a train car all the way back east. But neither here nor there. But that's what she did, and then the winery business. Proper skipped a generation at my dad's level. He grows grapes. A lot of his cousins in that era of the family grow grapes. And then there was a property that came up for sale in Dry Creek Valley there, just north of Healdsburg, and it's kind of one of those things I couldn't pass up. So I as you say, I went to school, and I started in engineering and worked in tech, and couldn't wait to get out of there after 10 years. And then I kind of saw this opportunity and kind of ran with it. And it's hard to believe it's been 20 years.
That's awesome. That's a great story, and 20 years that's a good chunk of time too. So I'm glad to see success come from it for sure.
Yeah, I think when I look in the mirror and see the gray, it reminds me that it's been 20 years.
I feel you.
Yeah.
So you kind of grew up in the outdoors there as well. How long have you been into hunting, fishing, and all that?
So my growing up, Healdsburg is a lot different when I was growing up. In the 80s and 90s, it was one of those places that, when I was a teenager, I think there were, a couple stoplights and, a couple random hotels, and really tourism hadn't hit, Healdsburg and the Sonoma County wine country yet. And so I was a teenager, knew it all, couldn't wait to get the heck out of there. And, went to school and, worked in tech for, it was a good experience, but, it was a challenge. It just didn't feel right. The shoe didn't fit. I mean, I didn't have to wear a suit every day, but I was traveling way too much. I just, one day I'm like, I'm done with this. Just the quality of life is just not there for me. And so I couldn't wait to get, back to Healdsburg. And I started, if you could take a pin and move it, put it in a map, you'd see my progression north. Or if you put one of those radio collars they put on deer, you could track me moving north back towards Healdsburg. But it was because I grew up when I was 4. We moved to a ranch that was mostly cattle, but it had ponds on it, and so I was always fishing for bass or as catfish, or just I come home from school and grab the 22 and out the door and just go explore and there's a big there's probably a 12 to 15 acre patch of hardwood forest where I'd always find mushrooms and forage, and I grew up doing that with my dad every weekend. And he grew up doing it with his dad prior to that. So, generationally, growing up in a small town, my grandfather's second generation, my dad's third generation, you have your favorite mushroom spots, you have your favorite, creeks that you fish, you just, and so, his dad taught him and my dad taught me. And so, some of the early memories just go up to, Friday night during deer season. Our deer season's in, A-zone, California, which is starts the second weekend in August, which is 102 degrees, and all the oak leaves are like potato chips, and and the deer flies are anyway. So blacktail hunting in California is a challenge, but it's not about that. It was about the barbecue. I can close my eyes and I can smell the barbecue. Just in that, and the sun goes down and the air gets crisp, and the smoke smells different, and then in the porch, and it was all gas lantern, and so you can hear the hum of the gas lanterns, and you'd sleep on the porch, and my dad would get me up in the morning. We had one of those old white Willys Jeeps that you drive around, and this was on property that my grandfather purchased after he got back from World War II. So, legacy, family, generations. So it's just kind of in my blood of what we do in our downtime.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so for you, where do you feel like kind of the intersection of wild food and wine happens? I know we're going to dive kind of deep down into it. We're going to talk about lots of different aspects of it, but I think this question kind of up front could set the scene a little bit. Yeah.
It happens in a couple spaces for me. I mean, I think the, kind of the emotional or philosophical space of, like I was talking about with, there's certain sights and sounds and that are just unique, right? Where the smoke smells different, like once the air starts to chill, or quiet, of being alone or in the middle of nowhere. It's just there's almost a heaviness to the air. And the same thing happens with for me with food and wine. I mean, everybody, or a lot of people have sat, somewhere and taken out a dry piece of bread and a piece of cheese and a piece of salami after they've been hiking for 7 miles, and that is some of the best food you've eaten, right? But if it was your lunch break, on a Wednesday and you're in the city, you'd be like, I got to find something to eat. I'm not eating this. This is terrible. So it's contextual.
Yeah.
So it's the long answer back to the intersection of wine and food has always existed and is very accepted in mass society. But then for me, wine and wild food is part of a lifestyle, part of purity of flavor, and it's to me, it's one of those moments in time when you get it right. It's great.
Yeah, I think too, and we have, as we think about, I've talked about a lot of this, and you and I talked about this on the phone, I think of like this whole concept of terroir and like wild game having terroir and wine having terroir, and sort of like those sort of intersections meeting and finding that equitable plane to pair them together, where like you're matching various aspects of it. To me, I think that's fun, and the more that I've experimented with wine with wild game, and the more that I've dove into it and tried to really focus on pairing flavor profiles, I think I've enjoyed it more, and it's opened it up. I've always liked wine. I trained in restaurants where wine was very very sought after. My wife trained as a sommelier, and we've just really kept really involved in wine throughout our lives, and I think that incorporating it into wild game, where you tend to see a lot of folks lean more towards beer or more towards other spirits, and wine's kind of like there. But I think you and I talked a little bit about that of kind of like demystifying sort of drinking wine as well, and I know that you have some thoughts on that, and just curious how do we shift our mindset to sort of make it more approachable or more commonplace amongst the wild food community?
That's a great question. I mean, I think I think we certainly talk about the wild food community, but on a broader brush, just in general, I think the wine industry, I think, has done itself a disservice with all of the rules and safeguards and supposed tos and have tos that it puts in place in terms of whether it be pairings. This wine should only be consumed with these types of foods, or this wine should be only consumed in this temperature range, or only drink it out of this type of glass. It's what you're doing is you're putting a bunch of negatives in front of something that is, and I've said this before, it's just a beverage. Wine at the end of the day is a beverage and should be consumed however you want to. Your relationship with your beverages is your your deal. And right, I mean, drink what you want. I break a lot of rules with wine. I drink, Sauvignon Blanc with, I drink based on my mood, right? And sometimes I'm just not in the mood to drink Cabernet with, heavy red meats, or follow those rules. So, and my glasses, I never have a stemmed glass. And I never have the right reel. But I will say that, the glasses and the temperature, all those things do matter. But it's all about your relationship and how deeply you want to dive into that. You don't have to. And like you said earlier, you're having fun just experimenting with flavors and, and wines and what goes with what, and some spices and some, game from different regions. To me, that's the fun part, because there's no wrong answer.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I think it's always interesting, because you find yourself at like social gatherings and things, and there's like a big spread of food, and there's all these different foods, and then there's bottles of wine over in the corner, and you're just like sampling and tasting, and it's just like all the rules in that moment kind of go out the window. And I think like maybe you find some non-traditional flavors that people would look differently at, but you enjoy it, and I think it's fine too. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and that is the fun part about wine, because if you go into it with an open mind, number one, ego is checked at the door, number two, and you're open to explore, then really there's no wrong answer, because you could say, geez, I really like this pairing, and I might not like it, but that's no reflection on either of us. It is simply, it's the same thing as like, I don't drink Guinness. The darker the beer, I have trouble with. It's just not my thing. I like lighter style beers. So, if you look at it in that context, then I'm perfectly fine and comfortable with saying that, and about beer, and so are other people. But when it comes to wine, people are like, oh geez, I don't know if I should be saying that or I shouldn't be saying that. I really don't want to be wrong about wine, where in fact at the end of it, it is a beverage, and you get to like it or not like it, just the same with anything else.
Yeah. I don't know, Adam, what are your thoughts? I want to leave you out of this conversation. I see a lot of smiling and nodding.
No, I'm just agreeing with everything you say. It's I think sometimes rules are put in place to set people apart. Like a lot of the old etiquette rules were actually made so poor people could never feel welcome at a dinner table. I know there's rules in place in wine for a reason, but I feel like there is a culture that surrounded that became unapproachable for the average person. And like you mentioned, wild game's more likely to be eaten with a Bush Light or something than wine, unless you go to a really fancy restaurant where they're serving elk or venison or something, and then you're getting really nice expensive wines with it. And there's that middle ground that's kind of missing, where people want to elevate their wild game dishes a little bit and enjoy some nice wine with it, but not spend $300 on a bottle or something like that. And I was really excited when I learned about Passalacqua Winery and everything, that was exactly what was happening, like an approachable wine with approachable food that's a little more elevated than maybe, like a can of mushroom soup kind of meal. And wild game, like there's a big, huge middle ground that's just ripe for the public, and I think that's really cool that you're doing that, because I've always felt like I belonged in that middle ground. I don't belong at a super fancy restaurant, but I do like to enjoy some of the finer things too. So I think that's really cool.
I think that comes from one of the things you mentioned. Education is empowerment, right? So through at the winery, when we do tastings or when I talk to people, or what we're trying to do, which I'm sure we'll get into later, but this combination of information, data, recipes, references that we're trying to accumulate under this program called Pair Wild, is about educating people and giving them a central resource of where to go and how to connect wine and recipes, wine, wild game. And I do believe that once that happens and they learn and they can, and I think it's just a spark. It's not like a dissertation, but I do believe that is empowerment. So they go, they're recommending with this recipe from so-and-so that if we drink this bottle of wine, I'm going to order some of that, and I'm going to have it, and I'm going to pull that backstrap out of the freezer, and we're going to try that. Right. And then all of a sudden, you're like, it's just another arrow in the quiver. You're like, oh, I like beer with that recipe, and I like wine with that recipe. And, not neither is better or worse. It's just, more experience.
I think you mentioned the Pair Wild program, and we'll go into it, but I want to say one of my most favorite things about your program with that, Jason, is the labeling on the back of the bottles. So I can tell you, like, as a chef, I can set and I compare flavors of food ingredients with game meat very easily. I still struggle to walk into the grocery store or the liquor store and look at this big wine shelf and they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to pair with this meal? And I appreciate the fact that it's not just, on the back of your bottles you have, highly recommended, and kind of up to you, or is the way it's laid out.
Yeah, you decide. Yeah,
you decide. And I think that's great. And you give kind of 3 meat options, but it gives a starting point for somebody who may not be quite as comfortable just going to a bottle and being like, oh, a 2010 Cabernet, I'm going to pair it with this meal over here. It's just I can pick up the bottle, flip it to the back, and just like you said, I got a venison backstrap in the freezer. Oh, perfect. This bottle, will go well with that. So let me go give it a try.
And that's that was fun to do, because what we did was we pulled out, we identified, I think it was 16 wild foods, and there's there's big game, elk, venison, antelope, boar. And I'm sure I'm going to miss some off the top of my head, but then there's fowl, there's ducks and geese and quail and some upland and pheasant, and then there's some seafood. I think we have crabs and salmon and some others, and then we go into some commonly foraged mushrooms, and so it was this spectrum of wild foods. And so I pulled some out of the freezer and some I was out of, so I borrowed from some friends and some I ordered, and all but they're very common. They're common wild game or wild food items, and that was purposeful. And then, but what we did is we got those and we cooked them. And how I cooked them was lightly salted and then just pan seared. So no flavors, no marinades, no spices, nothing. So it was really about the purity of flavor from that animal. And yes, you can drill down. You and I have talked to is, elk from Western Montana tastes different than elk from Eastern Montana. So, and times of year. So there's a lot of variables that go into this, but we were trying to just, take a baseline, and not saying that, Passalacqua wines pair with everything. And we're not saying that Passalacqua is the only wine that pairs with wild game or these items. There's lots of wines out there, but stylistically, in the way we make our wine, tends to pair well with wild foods, and we can get into that, in a bit. But so what we did is when we tasted these, we went through, all of our wines, and we do this every year. And, Justin, Adam, you guys should come out and do this with us, because there's 20,
Okay.
20 or 30 20 or 30 bottles 30 bottles lined up on the conference room table, and we're cooking, and we're doing we'll segment it out for the day, but you're tasting it, you're tasting the flavors, and you're tasting the wines, different wines. And there's pairings for me fall in two sections, right? You have the section of wow, these flavors are very similar and they complement each other. And then you have the other ones. It's almost like art and negative space, where the art or the food fills in spaces with the wine, and so it becomes this seamless tapestry. Cool. And those are the ones that are really interesting to me. And we make this southern white varietal called Fiano, and it pairs really well with duck, which I was like, oh, Pinot, duck, done, easy. Yes, that's a very nice pairing, but Fiano and duck was a total surprise. In there you have, a white wine paired with duck, and probably it's not anywhere in the rule books sanctioned by the wine gods, but it's a really great pairing.
Yeah, that I'm trying to remember if that was one that we took to Goose Camp. I think it was.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think I sent some.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
and,
I think I really
yeah,
like
that was
one.
a really good one.
Yeah.
I think we paired that one on. Was it the first night we did with the meatballs, the goose meatballs?
Yeah, I think the Swedish goose meatballs,
which was
snow
goose.
Yeah.
Snow goose has this really incredible flavor. We just Adam's podcast on it, on kind of snow goose meat and burgers itself, released today. But it's really exquisitely aged grass-fed beef is the flavor, and that Fiano just matched it so very, very well. It's wild to think.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So I guess before we dive too far into this generally, what I guess you've kind of bridged the gap and opened up sort of your own sort of methods of tasting and following that. But I want to talk a little bit about the traditional kind of pairings between game and types of wine. Could you run us through that just real quick, just to set a baseline before we start diving into kind of more flavor stuff?
You're talking just like traditionally, like Sauvignon, like lighter, crisper whites generally go with. They're generally seafood wines. Lighter style fair food wines. You get into Chardonnay that has a little more buttery, some butter, some texture, some oak. Those go really well with more of like like anything in a cream sauce, things in like a little more fattiness to them. Like crab, crab, lobster. The butter goes well with butter type connection. Lighter reds. Generally, you can bridge into some of the upland foods. And then you get into some Pinot, which can have a little more depth and texture depending on where it's made or how it's made. Has some earthiness to it that I've found goes well with and we're just broad brushing it right now, but some of the like fowl, like ducks and geese, and then it depends on some. I found to go well with some elk, and then you get into some heavier reds that generally some of the heavier reds are tricky with wild game. And this is where we talk about wine and winemaking style, because you can get into, generally there's some rules of thumb where, like tannic wines go well with fatty foods because they cut the like prime rib, right? And if it's like, oh, give me a big cab and some prime rib. That's like the most common pairing. And one of the reasons for that is the tannins in the Cabernet can really cut the fat on the palate, and therefore that's helping you taste more of the meat of the prime rib flavor. So and that's why back to why Passalacqua wines pair well with wild game is I think there's a balance that flows through our wine and our winemaking style where they're not overly tannic, they're not sweet, there's no residual sugar. The oak content in the wine is layered in and supports the fruit. It's not like, oh, I taste oak when I taste this. Our Chardonnay, you taste fruit, you don't taste butter and oak. So, those components is one of the reasons why Passalacqua wines go well with wild game, because the fat content is generally very low, and there's this really richness and purity of flavor that that you get from wild foods.
Very interesting.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. You're opening up my mind even further, Jason.
but what it does, when you hear that, to me, it makes me want to go explore, pairings. And I was talking to one chef the other day. He's like, I don't know if I'm right for your program, because he's like, I tend to not stick to one thing. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like for months, I'll just get immersed in sardines. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I said, I'd love for you to take my wine and be like, yeah, on the back of the label here, it says it goes well with, salmon and crab, but it really does kicks butt with these sardines. I think you should put sardines on the back of this label. I'm like, go for it, man. Criticize. Tell me you disagree with the label. That's the fun part, right? I mean, that's the fun part about wine. Like, have an opinion, taste it, and be like, oh, I think this will go really well with that boar we have in the freezer.
And I think, too, we talked about that regional differences, too, in flavor profiles and meats. Like, talking about just like waterfowl, but Colin, who used to be our community manager and still floats around, was living in Oregon at the time, and he's like, I'd shoot these Canada goose and they'd just be super swampy and like whatever. And then you've got Adam on the other side of the country shooting Canada geese, and they're just like super tasty and delicious, and just that difference in flavor profile of like, man, you could open up like 6 bottles of wine and just go through it and be like, this is good, this one's good on this one over here, but on this one on from Oregon it's not so great. Like, but that to me excites me because it adds variety. And I think what happens in the wild game space a lot, just even on the recipe side, is you've got like probably three main mindsets. You've got people that have cooked everything that their family has cooked for years and years and years the same exact way. You've got people that are leading the space in innovation and trying to do more crazy, wild, different things with wild fish and game. And then you've got kind of a big group in the middle that's just kind of like, I like Swedish meatballs, but I also really want to try like a Wellington or something, some exact fun pan sauce that I can create. And I think the wine, the ability to look across the spectrum and see wine introduced and consumed throughout all those is just like Adam mentioned earlier. Is like folks drinking, PBR with their venison burger could easily switch to, a glass of wine. And, on the top end of the spectrum, somebody doing like some kind of cream stuffed morels that are deep fried with venison heart and, foraged spring onion. Like, you could do the same. And it really, I like what you said earlier, Jason, is almost like drink what makes you happy. Drink it the way that makes you happy. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Like the other night, I had some, cooked up some burgers. I was drinking a cocktail while I was cooking, and I'm like, I'm enjoying my cocktail. I'm just going to have that through dinner. Right. And I don't know that it pairs I don't know. That's what I wanted to drink. So, I think that's an important takeaway for anyone.
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys this much. I made the mistake of opening a beer for this podcast, and it's not pairing well at all with this podcast. I really, really want one right now.
I've got a bottle.
It was a dumb move.
My wife and I were absent kids this week. They're at my mom's place, so we're gonna go up and enjoy a glass of wine after the show. So I'm saving my wine points.
Well, it would. Yeah, back to the education and empowerment. So I had a group of guys in to turkey hunt a few weeks ago, and they showed up at my house, and I'd met them briefly, like for 5 minutes, a few weeks before, but they wanted to shoot some content, and they were in, and I said, yeah, come to the house before your flight gets in. Come to the house. We'll make a plan for the next day. So I had outside fridge. I got beer. I'm like, you guys want beer? And they're like, yeah, sure. I'd love a beer. So I think they're expecting to just be drowned in wine. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, who doesn't want a beer after a flight? Right?
Yeah.
So, we just sat around, drank beer, and they, whatever. The next day, the next night, after hunting, they came over in the afternoon, and I cooked some duck on the egg rotisserie, and then I did some elk and wild turkey in the Traeger, and I sat down, put it on the table, and I think we had some farro salad or something else, and but then I opened, I think there were like 6 of us or something. I opened up like 12 bottles of wine. I'm like, okay, so the purpose here is to, taste, eat, just, don't pour yourself a full glass. Just, pour yourself a couple, 1-2 ounces so you can taste and, go back and forth. And I think we had then I brought over like extra glasses for everybody. I'm like, because you got to taste this and taste that, and and then eat and figure out what you like and what you're not liking. And it was really interesting to watch these guys who were not wine. They self-proclaimed, I don't know anything about wine except I've had it at a couple wedding receptions type thing. And they were, they're super into like, oh, did you guys try this? I tried to try this one with that wine, and try that Cabernet with, with this elk. And so they were, back and forth. And so that was fun. And then the next night, we went out to dinner, and we were drinking cocktails, whatever. And, by the end of the night, you drink whatever you want. We're at a restaurant, right? By the end of the night, they're all drinking wine. And then I'm getting texts from them, a couple days later. They're like, we're drinking wine. It was awesome. Just this funny moment of, they didn't obviously give up beer or cocktails, but they're, they just were like, oh yeah, I got home and I was telling my, my wife, my girlfriend, whoever about the experience, and brought a bottle of wine home. And so I wanted to open it for them and tell them about it. And, but to me, that's like a win, right? Mm-hmm. Just because they had a great experience. They developed a relationship with wine that now allows them to go explore. And that was just because, I gave them a small bit of education on it. And really the education was through experience. I didn't tell them anything or, give them a handout. It was, they ate and they drank, and then all of a sudden now they're feeling empowered. And it was perfect.
I think
think of the world that's opened up. Oh, sorry,
no, go ahead.
Think of the world that's opened up in front of them now. Whether it's just they have another tasty beverage to enjoy, a different option, or they could follow it through and discover this massive, incredible world of wines too. It's like it's a big world that can open up for you, and you don't have to jump into it. You could take a baby step or a couple steps or do a cannonball. But I'm sure
you guys you guys see this all the time, interviewing, talking with people, and they have these different, different expertise in different disciplines. It's like so funny. Like you're so into what you're doing in your world, and then you start scratching the surface of somebody else's world, and you're like, and you get to peer in. You're like, wow, I had no idea it was that deep, and you can just go down the rabbit hole on so many subjects. It's fascinating. Just not enough time in the day.
I think that's probably what keeps me hosting podcasts is the fact that I get to talk and meet and, talk to really passionate people about really awesome topics and just kind of, selfishly educate myself while I'm, sharing this information with the world. And
right.
I think, too, to go back to your point, so what you described of like those guys over and just sampling the wine and tasting, since we've started incorporating your wine into our wild food camps, we've seen that as well of like, we'll prepare the meals in the evening, which, the guests are partially involved in too. And then as we're talking about drinks and beers and cocktails and wines. And then Ricky, who's our events manager, comes out and is like, okay, here's what we've selected to kind of pair with the dish today. Here are a couple options. Let me know what you want to try. And our guests are from all walks of life. But it's cool to see people be like, oh, I'll try a little bit of that. They'll taste a little bit, eat some dinner. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'll try some of that too. And they'll taste a little bit and eat. And then at the end of the meal, everybody has a clear favorite. And it's usually different across the board, which is cool to see. But I think just
exactly
as when we cook and share wild game with people for the first time at those camps, and you see this like aha moment and light bulb moment for them with the wild meat, I started seeing it with the wine of like, oh, like I traditionally drink beer, but like, wine. Like, yeah, this is awesome. And I think it goes back to sort of what we talked about initially was like that demystifying wine and just it's a beverage just like you said, and I think it's super cool and it's super applicable to wild game.
I agree, totally agree with that. And what type of, so in your these camps that you're putting on, they look great. Do you have new hunters in there? Do you have people that are trying to get into hunting? What's your who's the audience?
Everybody. We get brand new hunters. We've had people that, their first time shooting a gun is at the camp, and then the next morning they go out and they shoot a pig for the first time. We've had people who have hunted all their lives and maybe not really learned a lot about butchering. Maybe they took their meat to the processor every year, or they've been hunting all their life and they just never got into the food side. Maybe their partner prepared all the meals and they themselves are like, I've got some time, I've got some energy, I want to just learn to kind of do it myself and see what I like out of it. And then you've got some people, that the whole experience is just kind of a big shift for them, I think. Does that summarize it well, Adam? Anything you would add?
Right.
No, I think they're just coming from all over the states, like from the wide far reaches and all walks of life and all types of, we have a lot of like adult onset hunters or traditional hunters or people coming in like father and sons or families coming in. It's just like kind of a wide swath of everyone coming through, which is really neat because then you get to expose them to all sorts of new things, including your wine.
Right. Are you seeing more interest in? I feel like there's a funny to call it a movement, and I heard someone smarter than me talk the other day about. They're like, everybody's calling this wild food thing a movement. And he's like, it's not a movement. People have been doing it since the dawn of time. It's just we're getting back to it and realizing the benefits of it. Are you seeing more interest in your camps as of late because of that?
Yeah, I think, and it really is what motivated us to sort of create it. We've been doing it 2 years now, and I think more than that, 3 years now, going into our third year, and it's really, I think people are just, you've got a lot of things going on. Here's kind of what I credit to. Sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit of of a long-winded answer. As we saw sort of the switch, back a while ago, we'll say 10 years of like the movement from sourcing ingredients from all over the world to sort of looking more locally, right? So that like kind of locavore movement that happened, and we saw it in the restaurant scene, kind of caught up. You see people latching onto that and running with it. I think we see the food insecurity issues that happened during COVID, and then coming out of that, and then the just interest, I think, if younger folks go back, wanting to just kind of take more control and being very selective where they're spending their money and who they're spending their money with. And a lot of that has resulted of like, well, why turn to some industrial practices that I don't like when I myself can do it? And I think, I could see like, is it a movement or is it just kind of a resurgence of traditional thoughts? It's hard for me because I grew up doing it and I've been doing it my whole life, so it's hard to me see it any other different way. But I don't know, Adam, what are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a relatively new hunter, like an adult onset hunter, and I came into it because of the food more than anything, and my love for the outdoors. It just kind of made sense. But I do notice, like, just through everything I do online and in our camps themselves, the people who, like Justin was saying, who are getting into it as adults are often coming from like non-traditional hunting places. They're urbanites, or they're come from different families. Their families don't hunt. They have no mentors, and they're so interested, and they're just ready to soak up everything they can, and they just need someone to show them how to do it, because they've watched YouTube and they read books, but you can't beat having someone there showing you and correcting you while you're doing it. And I feel like there's a lot of people looking for some sort of mentorship, which I think is often my favorite people to camp. They're very keen and excited and just gung-ho, and they're looking to try something new and soak it all in with no traditions in the way. Like, they're not like, wow, my grandfather didn't do it like that, because no one ever taught them at all. So yeah, it's a really interesting subsection of the population.
I think too, like, out of the development of these camps, we've seen, because we put so much focus on the food, like literally from the time you walk into the door on Thursday to the time you leave Sunday morning, like, you're surrounded by food. We talk about food. We're like, oh, we're going to help you learn to butcher this pig, but first, like, go read the hog book, flip through some pages, find some recipes you like, and we'll teach you how to make the cuts that go with that recipe. So it's just like, it's very immersive in the food from the very get-go. And they eat wild pig the whole time they're there. They eat snow goose, or they eat fish, or whatever species we're targeting. And it's just that, like, that connection. And then from it, what I've seen too is, because it's food, and food transcends all communities, all cultures, right? Is that now we've created this little community of people that have all stayed connected, not just to us as like the camp hosts, but to each other. Like, I'll hear so-and-so's talking to so-and-so about this, or, like, we'll catch up with somebody from one of our camps, and he's like, I kept talking to, this guy down in Louisiana, and, like, I stay in touch, and we check in with each other every now and then. He, sent me pictures from his last hunt. Like, I was like, that's cool. That's what I love about the...
Made friends.
Yeah, I love that.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the Hot Grill Summer event through July 16th, with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
Holy smokes. we went off a bit. That's all right.
Well, I think I asked you about your camps because I think I feel like we as a winery have a spot where we sit kind of in the middle of the hourglass where, I obviously my love for outdoors and wild foods is, gives me some, some vision into this world that we're talking about now, and your camps, and hunting myself and these wild food chefs, and this world. And then on the other world, of wine, I look out and I see, the pairings, the traditional pairings of wine and food, and the accepted, from white tablecloth to backyard barbecue of, beef and burgers and so on. So, for me, what I'm trying to do with Pair Wild is, connect those two, because there's that world I was talking about of, from white tablecloth to, backyard burgers. There's farmers markets, there's CSA boxes, there's organic, biodynamic. There's this whole thing happening out there, and then I'm watching it just naturally happen, on the wild food side. And I'm like, I want to connect those two, because these people out here in this huge audience, really, there's this desire to know the source of your food, right? Your source of the food, and the same thing with us, source of the wine. They want to know, and they want to know from where their food's coming. Ideally, who makes it. You see this big surge of, online of beef direct, pork direct, all these direct foods shipping in. So, sitting in the middle there, I can see this happening, and just trying to connect these great wild food chefs, and and we're getting purveyors online. I mentioned earlier that we intentionally selected these these 16-ish wild foods, but these are foods that can be found in grocery stores and ordered online. You can find ground elk in your freezer section. You can order or sometimes find quail. All these things you can see. And so if I can make those links stronger and open up that funnel, or that pinch point between those two worlds, by enabling, educating, empowering, I think that it benefits everyone.
No, yeah, I agree. I think it just like widens that community as well. We've got like lumps of them, and they Venn diagram in some space, but like how do we broaden that intersection? No, it's really cool. I like it a lot. I love it when we talk, Jason. We have like minds, and it connects well. So let's see. Let's talk. I want to throw out just some quick tips. Do you have some favorite pairings of things that you like with your wine, that you like to prepare with certain meals, or just live life?
Yeah, I'm more of a free form in how I'm feeling. I like, what do I like? I like, it's so many going through. One of my favorite things right now is whole roasted duck on the rotisserie. And we make a Pinot that I think goes really well with that, or the Fiano. We're sold out of that right now because it's a real super popular wine, but it's one of my favorites. I like, I like Sauvignon Blanc with a lot of, especially in the summer, right? So I'm moody, so I drink a lot of Sauvignon Blanc and lighter wines in the summer. So Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot, some lighter Zins. Zins with venison seem to do really well. There's a flavor, and even like when you get into wine, if you're gonna geek out about it, you can go into like the mouthfeel and the aromatics and what they call retronasal. You're like like when you eat something and then you kind of smell it up through your sinuses, not because you inhaled it, but you ate it, and then you get some aromatics. They call that retronasal. So there's some things that go on with sometimes some Zinfandel and so I'm geeking out on you now on and venison, Cabernet and elk. But our Cabernets are a little bit different because they're not very tannic. So stylistically, Jessica's our winemaker, and she has a very so you said earlier that I make the wine. I got to correct you because she'll kill me on this. I don't make the wine. And she has a very her ethos of making the wine is we find these really unique, cool vineyards, and then we that really express themselves as we've talked about terroir and wild foods. It's the same thing with wine, right? These you get certain varietals grown in certain soils, certain microclimates, certain everythings that just give you fruit that expresses itself in the glass. And Jessica really believes that her job is really to get it from, from grape to glass with, the least amount of manipulation and just really let it shine and show its thing. So I think that's one of the reasons that another reason that our wines go really well with wild game, because you have like purity in the glass, purity on the plate.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Jessica, when you listen to this, my bad. So here's go. We're coming on the tail end of time, so I want to make sure we get this in. Where can people go to get your wine?
If you want to plan a trip and come to Sonoma County and Healdsburg, great flights in and out of Santa Rosa Airport, which is about 15 minutes away. It's a small airport. It makes travel easy. Come to the winery, and just have the Passalacqua experience, which is we have a big outdoor tasting area. And that's probably one of the best ways. The easiest way, if you're not scheduling a trip to wine country, is to go on PassalacquaWinery.com. I know it's probably tough to spell, but I'm sure we can figure it out.
We'll make sure there's links in the show notes, everybody. And what's a good way people could reach out to you or hit you up if they've got questions or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Jason at PassalacquaWinery.com. That's my direct email. That's probably the easiest. You can follow us on Instagram, message us on Instagram. That's easy as well. One of the things is if you do go on our website, explore the whole Pair Wild section. It's in its building phases right now. We're, getting recipes from different chefs. I think some of your recipes are up there.
They are.
Which we appreciate very
both
much.
Of us, I think, yeah.
We're doing a chef profile page, so we'll get your ugly mugs on the.
I don't know. I don't know if you want to put mine up there. Maybe just like a stick figure.
But eventually, where we want to go, and Justin, I've told you this before, is I have this vision for doing a chef's event in wine country that brings together talented folks like. Like you and Adam and others who really want to showcase some of these wild foods, and we have purveyors who are signing on that will ship a lot of these wild foods direct to people's doors. So what we're trying to do is link everybody together and enjoy it all over a bottle of wine.
Yeah, what's better than that? So this is kind of the last bit of the show where we just kind of go around any last thoughts, alibis, or anything you have. Jason, since you're the guest, so I'll give you the opportunity to go first. If anything you want to share with us, with the guests, ask, whatever, the floor is yours.
Thanks. No, I think we've covered it. I think the biggest thing though is open a bottle of wine, see if you like it. Read the notes on it, find out where it's from. Either go as deep as you want it or as shallow as you want, but don't be afraid to pop the cork and enjoy it.
Awesome. Thank you. Adam.
First of all, thanks for joining us. This has been great, and it's nice to actually finally meet you as well. Yeah, but I want to kind of reiterate what you said, but in a big way, like you said when you had all those guys down for the turkey hunt and how their minds are kind of open to wine. Say everyone has the opportunity to do that. Like have some buddies over, pull some stuff out of the freezer. You got some duck and venison and alligator or whatever you have in your freezer. Buy a few bottles of wine and try them out. Have a little party and make a fun night of it, and just see what you like, see what you don't like. I think it's I've done it here before, and it's a lot of fun. And it's so easy to do, and it's just something I think everyone involved will have a great time. So it's something people should try, hunters should try.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Thanks, Jason, for coming on. It's awesome to chat, as always. I think for me too, we talk about flavors across, and you think about somebody who takes advantage of the full season, right? They go out, they forage in the spring, the early summer, they get out, hit the lakes, the rivers, the ocean, whatever. In the fall, the mind shifts towards, hunting in the forests and fields and wherever you're at. And throughout this whole time, we're chasing sustenance, we're chasing adventure, we're chasing new and exciting flavors we like, flavors we're familiar with, whatever it be. And I think on the beverage side of it, there's so much room for exploration as well, and I think incorporating different things into your meals. And there's nothing to say have a dinner one night and put some beers out and put some wine out and make some cocktails and just see where you end up. Do it responsibly, but there's lots of room. And if you're a person who really enjoys variety and tasting different flavors and looking for those combinations and kind of putting those puzzle pieces together, I think wine and some of its natural complexity, just Jason said several times, pairs so well with game, and I think that it's something, and fish and forageables, it's something that can be added as another tool in your toolbox of like your overall approach to food. Drink what makes you happy, eat what makes you happy, and just overall, I think it's exactly something to just enjoy. But thanks everybody for listening. We'll post the show notes online. We'll post the links and everything we chatted about tonight, and then head over to social media. Make sure you're following Harvest Nature. Make sure you're following Passalacqua Winery, and whatever podcast platform you're listening to, please punch that 5-star button. Leave us a review. Tell us we're doing right, or tell us we're doing wrong. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.